Nothing in the universe made them afraid. Then they met humans and the war began. Best HFY stories for 10,000 cycles. The Varethi Empire had never known defeat. Their ships moved across the galaxy in perfect lines, shining like cold stars. Every world they reached bent the knee or burned. To the Varethi, conquest was not cruelty. It was order. It was destiny. They did not feel fear. Their minds were calm, steady, and exact. Their history held no stories of panic, no legends of desperate last stands. Other species feared them. That was the natural shape of the universe. When long-range scouts entered a quiet spiral arm filled with yellow stars and scattered colonies, they found something unusual. Radio noise flooded the void. Signals overlapped and contradicted each other. Thousands of voices spoke at once in different languages. The species called itself human. The scouts watched from a distance. They saw humans arguing in their broadcasts. They saw separate nations with separate leaders. They saw war among them, then peace, then war again. It looked chaotic, weak. The report returned to the Varethi High Council on their capital world, Valor. The council chamber was vast and silver, shaped like a half-sphere. Light flowed across the walls in soft waves as data projections hovered in the air. The scout commander spoke with calm certainty. The species is divided. Their military strength is moderate but inefficient. Their governments are not unified. Their emotional signals show instability. The council studied images of Earth, blue oceans, white clouds, cities glowing on the night side. They will submit, one counselor said. They will resist briefly, said another, but resistance will end. The final decision required no debate. A compliance fleet would be sent, not a war armada, just enough to make the lesson clear. Far from Valor, in a small orbital station above Mars, Captain Ethan Brooks rubbed his eyes and stared at the sensor display in front of him. The object had appeared without warning. It had not used any known drive signature. One moment space was empty. The next, something massive and metallic hung beyond the orbit of Neptune. "Tell me that's a glitch," Ethan said quietly. Lieutenant Nora Blake shook her head. "It's not a glitch. We have visual confirmation from 3 telescopes." The image sharpened on the main screen. The alien ship was long and curved, almost like a blade. Its surface reflected starlight in smooth silver lines. It was bigger than any human vessel ever built. No one spoke for several seconds. "Any signal?" Ethan asked. "Nothing we can read," Nora replied. "But it's scanning us." On Earth, emergency channels lit up. President Daniel Harper was rushed into a secure room beneath the Capitol. Military leaders from different nations appeared on screens around him. Some looked angry, some looked afraid. "They're not answering hails," one admiral said. "Are we sure it's not a probe?" another asked. Daniel leaned forward. He had been president for only 8 months. He had expected trade talks and climate problems. Not this. "It's too large to be a probe," he said. "And it's in a position that gives it a clear view of every major planet." On Mars Station, Ethan felt his heart beat harder than usual. He had trained for space combat against human enemies. He knew their weapons, their limits. This was different, unknown. "Raise shields to standby," he ordered. "Do not lock weapons. I don't want them thinking we're starting something." "Yes, sir," Nora said. Across the solar system, more alien ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, just 12. They formed a wide circle beyond Pluto, spaced with perfect precision. On Valor, the Varethi fleet commander observed the human system through layered holographic displays. His name, in human sounds, would be closest to Kaler. His thoughts moved like clear water. "Primitive energy grids," one officer noted. "Fragmented command structure." Kaler watched human ships scrambling into defensive positions. Their formations were uneven. Some ships moved too fast, others too slow. "They respond with emotion," the officer added. "Of course they do," Kaler replied. "All young species do." A transmission beam lanced from the largest Varethi vessel toward Earth. It carried a simple message translated through pattern recognition and mathematical constants. We are the Varethi Empire. This system now belongs to us. Submit and you will be preserved. Resist and you will be removed. The message repeated in every human language the Varethi could decode. In the underground room, silence followed the translation. Daniel felt cold. Preserved, one general muttered. What does that even mean? Ethan received the same message seconds later. The words felt unreal, like lines from an old science fiction movie. Nora swallowed. Sir, what do we do? Ethan thought of his wife in Colorado. He thought of his younger brother serving on a lunar transport. He thought of the billions of people on Earth who had no idea how powerful those ships might be. He was afraid. He admitted that to himself. Then he spoke clearly. We don't answer yet. Hold position. On Valor, Kaler waited for submission codes. He expected delay. Fear often caused confusion in early stages. Instead, he saw human ships moving outward from Earth and Mars, small compared to his fleet, but purposeful. They are forming a defensive shell, an officer observed. Kaler tilted his head slightly. I see. Another message was prepared, stronger in tone. Your refusal will result in termination of resistance centers. The beam flashed again toward Earth. In the underground chamber, voices rose. They're threatening planetary strike, a scientist said. They might be bluffing, someone else argued. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his voice was steady. If we surrender without knowing their terms, humanity ends today, he said. If we resist, we might still end, but at least we choose it. He looked at the screens. Signal all fleets. We do not surrender. The reply was short. Humanity does not recognize your claim. Leave our system. On Mars Station, Ethan saw confirmation that the message had been sent. Well, Nora whispered, that's it. Beyond Pluto, Kaler read the translated response. He did not feel anger. Anger was inefficient, but something shifted in his thoughts. Humans had chosen open defiance faster than projected. Interesting, he said. He gave a simple order. Demonstrate consequence. One of the smaller Varethi ships rotated slightly. Energy gathered at its core, bright and contained. Human sensors screamed warnings. Massive energy spike, Nora shouted. They're targeting the outer defense platform near Jupiter. Ethan's mouth went dry. Can we intercept? Negative, it's too fast. A beam of white light crossed the darkness. It struck the defense platform. For a second the structure glowed. Then it vanished in a silent explosion, fragments scattering like dust. 300 personnel were gone. The human fleet watched the debris drift. In the underground chamber, someone swore softly. Daniel felt grief hit him like a wave. But there was no time for it. They just killed our people, a general said. We have to respond. Ethan stared at the empty space where the platform had been. Fear twisted in his chest. Those were his people. Human lives ended in a blink. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Captain Brooks. You saw what they did. We cannot match their firepower head-on, so we don't try. Target their weapon emitters. Focus fire, make them adjust. His voice steadied as he continued. We are not alone out here. Every ship with a drive and a gun is with us. We hold the line. Human ships accelerated. They were smaller, rougher in design. Different nations' symbols marked their hulls. They did not move in perfect symmetry like the Varethi. They moved like a crowd rushing forward together. On Kaler's flagship, tactical projections shifted. They advance, an officer said. Direct engagement likely. Kaler studied the incoming vessels. So soon. He had expected weeks of hesitation, political division, attempts at negotiation. Instead, the humans charged. Deploy defensive screens, he ordered. Disable their propulsion. Minimize destruction. We will still require labor assets. The first human missiles streaked across space. Some were shot down instantly. Others struck Varethi shields and burst into sparks of light. The Varethi returned fire precise and measured. Human ships exploded in brief flashes. Others spun out of control. Ethan gripped the railing beside his station as the Resolute shook. "Shields at 60%, Nora reported. "We can't take many more hits." "Keep moving," Ethan said. "Never straight, never predictable." Around him, officers shouted coordinates and damage reports. Sweat ran down faces. Hands trembled over controls. Across the battlefield, something unexpected happened. A damaged human frigate, engines failing, altered course directly toward a Varethi cruiser. "They are on collision trajectory," a Varethi officer noted calmly. "They will break away," another said. The frigate did not break away. It slammed into the cruiser's shield at full burn. The impact overloaded a section of the shield grid. Human explosives detonated at point-blank range. For the first time in recorded history, a Varethi warship lost structural integrity in combat with a lesser species. On Kaler's display, the cruiser's signal flickered. "Report," he said. "Shield collapse in segment 4. Hull damage sustained. Casualties present." Casualties. The word felt heavy. Kaler watched more human ships adjust their attacks, aiming for the weakened shield segment. "They learn mid-conflict," he murmured. On the Resolute, cheers broke out as the damaged cruiser drifted out of formation. "They can bleed," Nora said, disbelief in her voice. Ethan did not smile. "So can we." Another blast struck a nearby human destroyer, tearing it in half. The wreckage spun slowly. The battle was uneven. For every Varethi ship damaged, 3 human ships were lost. But the humans did not retreat. On Valor, distant observers began to request updates more frequently than usual. That had not happened in centuries. Kaler felt something new stirring in his thoughts. It was not fear. Not yet. It was uncertainty. These humans were not behaving as projected. They did not collapse under demonstration of superior force. They adapted. They sacrificed. "Commander," an officer said, "recommend escalation to full planetary strike. End resistance immediately." Kaler watched the chaotic movement of human ships. He watched one small vessel shield a transport as it jumped to safety. "No," he said after a pause. "Not yet." He wanted to understand this species. In the human command network, losses mounted. Casualty numbers climbed into the thousands. Medical ships filled with wounded. Ethan forced himself to keep issuing orders. Inside, fear burned. Not just fear of death, fear of extinction. But every time he considered retreat, he saw the beam that had erased the platform near Jupiter. There would be no safety in surrender. As the battle continued, a simple truth spread through every human channel. The aliens could be hurt. It was a small victory in a field of fire. But it changed something. The Varethi had entered the system believing they faced prey. Instead, they had found something that bared its teeth. And for the first time in their long history, the Empire faced an opponent that did not act like it was supposed to. The war had begun. The human fleet did not stop after the first encounter. Losses had been heavy, but they had learned something important. The Varethi were not invincible. Captain Ethan Brooks moved through the command deck of the Resolute like a man carrying both fear and hope. He had been trained to command fleets, but nothing in his training had prepared him for an enemy who had never known fear, an enemy that had destroyed entire platforms with a single beam. "Report," he said, his voice calm even though his hands shook slightly. Lieutenant Nora Blake turned to him, her face pale but determined. "Damage is extensive. Frigates Zeta and Theta are gone. Shields on Alpha are holding but barely. Enemy ships are still out of range of our main weapons." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered the first blast, the platform near Jupiter that had vanished in an instant. Thousands of lives lost. His own crew could have been next. The Varethi were precise, efficient, unstoppable, or so they believed. He opened his eyes and looked at the screen. Human ships moved in a strange formation. Not perfect lines, not neat waves, chaotic arcs and irregular paths. Some ships seem to weave unpredictably between fire streams. They are flying like a storm, Nora said, almost in awe, like they don't care about their own safety. That's exactly it, Ethan replied. We fight smarter, not just stronger. We adapt. Follow me. Watch their shields and engines. Attack where they think we won't. In the Varethi command ship, Kaler observed the same movements with a mixture of curiosity and irritation. Their calculations had predicted surrender. Their analysis expected panic. Humans had neither surrendered nor panicked. Instead, they adapted in seconds. They are unpredictable, an officer said. Our targeting systems are struggling. Kaler nodded slowly. Yes, that is new. Adjust fire patterns and try to force them into a straight line. They will break eventually. Back in human space, Ethan ordered the fleet into action. Small frigates moved to flank the largest Varethi cruisers, drawing fire away from transports and weaker ships. Drones launched from the Resolute, carrying small but effective energy disruptors. The Varethi shields flickered in ways no human science could have anticipated. On the bridge of the Resolute, Ethan felt a spark of hope. Every time a Varethi ship lost shields or veered off course, the humans cheered, even if only for a moment. It was small, but morale mattered. Prepare boarding teams, Ethan said quietly. If we can't destroy their ships, we can at least disable them. Focus on engines and communication nodes. Make them think twice about attacking us. Lieutenant Blake hesitated. Sir, boarding Varethi ships, are we crazy? Maybe, Ethan said, but desperation has a way of making you sane or dead. Either way, we try. Meanwhile, the humans on the smaller frigates worked with reckless bravery. Pilots like Ryan Cole flew directly into concentrated fire streams, forcing the enemy to divert power from one target to another. Engineers on each ship modified weapon systems on the fly. Mines meant for planetary defense were adapted into space hazards. Explosions flickered in the void, destroying small sections of enemy shields and causing confusion. Even civilians joined in where they could. Mining vessels retrofitted as combat ships appeared out of nowhere, carrying materials that humans had barely tested. Their presence was a wild card. Kaler did not understand why humans risked lives that had not been trained for combat. They fight differently, a Varethi officer whispered. They feel fear, but they do not run. Kaler did not answer immediately. He had studied thousands of species. None had defied fear in the way these humans did. They adapted instantly. They took risks that were illogical by every standard. They did not surrender, even when the outcome seemed certain. On the human side, Dr. Megan Carter worked tirelessly in a converted cargo bay. Her team modified mining equipment into makeshift gravity disruptors. Each one was dangerous to handle, but the results could destabilize a small area of space temporarily. Jake Miller, a fleet strategist, coordinated attacks from the Resolute. He observed patterns, tracked weaknesses, and created new attack strategies that constantly changed every few seconds. The Varethi algorithms struggled to predict human behavior. They adjust too quickly, Kaler said. Every time we think we have the advantage, they change the pattern. It is irritating. The humans were learning from each encounter. Each time they lost a ship, the fleet adapted. They learned to shield weaker ships behind stronger ones. They used the debris of destroyed ships as temporary cover. They even feigned retreats to draw the Varethi into traps. One small transport ship, carrying civilians, became a decoy for a Varethi cruiser. The cruiser pursued at full speed, thinking it was the main target. Then a squadron of frigates exploded from hidden angles, hitting the cruiser with everything they had. The cruiser's shields collapsed in a section. Explosions rocked its hull. Back on Earth, the news channels were filled with the images of the first human victories. People cheered even as fear ran through every home. Humanity was small compared to the Varethi, but they were relentless. They refused to surrender, refused to retreat, refused to give up. Ethan watched the unfolding chaos from the Resolute's bridge. Each time a human ship was lost, he felt the weight of responsibility. Each time a Varethi ship was damaged, he felt hope. They were outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered, and yet they kept fighting. "Sir," Nora said, "incoming fire from 3 cruisers. They're targeting the Alpha frigates directly." "Good," Ethan said, his voice low. "They think they can intimidate us. Let them waste energy. Focus on their weak points. Strike back." The Varethi, for the first time, experienced hesitation. Their calculations were thrown off. The humans adapted faster than predicted. They used chaos as a weapon, improvisation as a shield. Their fear did not paralyze them, it fueled their ingenuity. In 1 short hour, 2 Varethi ships were critically damaged, not destroyed but forced to withdraw. Another had lost navigation controls temporarily. Kaler stared at the projections, something stirring in his mind that had never been there before. "This species, they are not like the others," he said quietly. "They fight even when terrified." Another officer frowned. "It is irrational," Kaler shook his head. "Perhaps, but we must respect the outcome. They are dangerous." The battle continued through the orbital lanes of Mars and the outer system. Human ships continued to fight even when surrounded. Smaller vessels sacrificed themselves to draw enemy fire. Larger vessels carried critical strikes to cripple enemy shields. Each maneuver was dangerous, daring, and reckless. On the Resolute, Ethan saw a pattern emerging. The Varethi could not predict the humans. They had never faced a species that acted without pure logic, a species that thought in emotion and instinct at the same time. Humans were unpredictable, and unpredictability was lethal. "They will not give up," Nora said, almost in awe. "No," Ethan replied. "And that's why we might survive." Across the battlefield, chaos reigned. Explosions flared against the blackness of space. Shattered ships floated like stars gone wrong. Communications between Varethi vessels became tangled as their algorithms failed to adjust to the humans. Rapid improvisation. Then, one of the smaller human ships, barely operational after previous attacks, charged directly at a Varethi destroyer. It rammed the enemy hull while detonating a series of modified explosives. The destroyer's shields failed entirely in that sector. Alarms blared across the Varethi fleet. Kaler studied the event with careful attention. He had never witnessed a species that could combine fear, strategy, and sacrifice so effectively. "They fight without fear of death," he muttered. "It is not possible." Back on the Resolute, Ethan's crew cheered as the Varethi destroyer faltered. He felt relief but not celebration. Every victory cost human lives. Every mistake could end the battle. "Damage reports," he said. "We hold together, we adapt, we survive. That's the only plan we have." Throughout the fleet, humans kept moving, kept firing, kept adapting. Even the civilians, pressed into service, contributed to the chaos that the Varethi could not control. Engineers made quick repairs. Pilots took risky maneuvers. Scientists deployed improvised weapons in ways no one had imagined. By the end of the day, the Varethi had learned something new. Their empire, undefeated for 10,000 cycles, faced a species that refused to surrender, refused to run, refused to bend. Kaler could not name it yet. It was not fear. It was something he had not studied. Something dangerous. On the human side, Ethan looked at the projection of the battle. Ships lost, people dead. Yet the line held. They were battered but not broken. They had learned the first lesson of the Varethi War. Survival was possible when fear became fuel. In the silent moments after the first major clash, both sides considered what had happened. Humans had lost ships. Humans had lost people. But humans had also shown the impossible. They had struck, adapted, and survived. For the first time, the Varethi knew that their enemy was unlike any they had faced. And for the first time, humans knew they were not alone in the galaxy, and they could fight even against the impossible. The war had begun, and the first battle was only the start. Humans would not retreat, they would not surrender, and the Varethi, who had never known fear, were beginning to understand it. If you want, I can continue with Part 3, also expanded to 1,600 words, showing the escalation of the war and humans, clever strategies that start turning the tide against the Varethi. Do you want me to do that next? The first clashes in the outer solar system had shaken both sides. Humans had survived when they should have been crushed, and the Varethi were beginning to understand that this species did not fight like others. Fear did not stop them. Instead, it made them clever, dangerous, and unpredictable. On Earth, the War Council met in a secure underground complex beneath the Capitol. President Daniel Harper, exhausted from sleepless nights, watched the projections of battles as reports came in from Mars, the asteroid belt, and the outer colonies. Human losses were heavy, but the enemy's losses were growing as well. Jake Miller, a young fleet strategist, leaned over the table with maps and holograms spread out in front of him. "We can't fight the Varethi like a normal fleet," he said. "Their ships are bigger, faster, and more precise than ours. If we keep trying to meet them head-on, we will lose too many people. We need to fight differently." Dr. Megan Carter nodded, adjusting her glasses. "We can't match their energy weapons. But we can make traps, improvised weapons, gravity mines, energy pulses, even old mining drones. We can use the environment, debris, asteroid fields, anything that forces them to fight on our terms." President Harper listened carefully. "So you are saying we turn every disadvantage into an advantage?" "Yes," Jake said. "We take what they expect and break it. We make them think the next attack is safe, then hit them where it hurts. We are weaker, but we are unpredictable. That is our weapon." Ethan Brooks stood quietly in the corner of the council room, listening. He had seen unpredictability work in small skirmishes. Now he was thinking of using it across the entire fleet. But the idea was risky. Too risky. Every plan required ships to put themselves in danger, sometimes without backup. "The Varethi are learning," Ethan said. "They are adapting too. Every trick we try, they adjust. We need to stay one step ahead, but that means taking chances." Nora Blake, who had arrived to join the council, added, "Every human ship out there knows the risks. They follow orders because they trust us and because they trust themselves. That's something the Varethi don't understand. They think fear is weakness." President Harper nodded. "Then we use it. We make them afraid in ways they cannot calculate." Meanwhile, the Varethi High Council convened on Valor. Kaler had been watching the human fleet with increasing interest and frustration. Their movements were chaotic but effective. Small numbers of ships struck key points, then disappeared into asteroid fields or behind planets. The humans seemed fearless, even when cornered. "They adapt faster than our simulations," one officer said. "They anticipate our attacks in ways we cannot predict." Kaler's silver eyes narrowed. "They are not logical," he said, "and yet they win." "Perhaps it is courage," the officer suggested. Kaler shook his head. "No, courage is not enough. They fight despite fear. That is dangerous." He studied the projections again. Humans had lost thousands of ships in the last week, yet they continued to strike. Smaller craft rammed larger ones when weapons failed. Civilians pressed into service with mining drones modified into combat tools. Human ingenuity and recklessness combined into a force Kaler had never encountered. "Adjust tactics," Kaler ordered. "Do not underestimate them, but do not destroy everything yet. Observe. Learn. They may be worth studying before we erase them." Back in the human fleet, chaos reigned, but it was organized chaos. Ethan Brooks and Jake Miller coordinated attacks using unpredictable patterns. Every few minutes, human ships changed course, creating confusion among the Varethi. Megan Carter's improvised weapons were deployed in waves, striking enemy shields, engines, and communication networks. Small frigates darted in and out of asteroid belts, firing missiles that detonated in patterns the Varethi could not anticipate. Mining drones exploded near enemy hulls, forcing them to maneuver suddenly. Even damaged ships were used as bait, drawing fire while other humans struck weak points. "Watch Sector 4, Jake shouted. "They've shifted their formation. Fire the disruptors now." Explosions flared against the black of space. The Varethi cruisers faltered, shields sparking under unexpected attacks. Human ships slipped between them like water around rocks. Ethan gripped the console, his knuckles white. Each maneuver carried risk, but the humans' willingness to act despite fear gave them strength. Every lost ship, every sacrifice, taught the fleet how to survive the next attack. A small human frigate, heavily damaged from a previous skirmish, rammed a Varethi cruiser. The shields broke in one section. Megan Carter's improvised explosives detonated at the same moment. The cruiser lost propulsion and drifted, spinning out of formation. Kaler watched the result in disbelief. "They combined fear and sacrifice into strategy," he said. "This is evolution in motion." The war spread across human colonies in the outer system. The Varethi had expected quick victories, but humans refused to surrender anywhere. Civilian settlements became fortresses. Scientists and engineers on these worlds modified old ships and equipment into weapons. On the colony of Titan, a small group of humans transformed mining vessels into energy platforms. They set up traps using the moon's gravitational fields to alter trajectories, forcing Varethi ships into chaotic paths. Every attack had a cost, but the Varethi could not predict it. Lieutenant Mara Johnson, leading a group of pilots, performed dangerous maneuvers. Her squadron split into unpredictable patterns, confusing enemy targeting systems. When one of her fighters was destroyed, another immediately took its place. Fear existed in their minds, but it did not stop them. "Hold your line," Mara shouted over comms. "We fight smart and fast. Don't let them pin us down." The humans fought not because they were invincible, but because they refused to die quietly. They turned fear into fuel. Kaler had never faced anything like it. The humans were not following the normal laws of survival. They adapted mid-battle, learned from each loss, and struck in ways that no simulation had predicted. Their unpredictability became a weapon. "Why do they fight when they are afraid?" Kaler asked quietly. "They are strange," his officer replied. "They do not surrender. They improvise, and they survive." Kaler studied the humans with growing respect and a hint of fear. The Varethi Empire had never been tested in this way. A species that understood danger but refused to yield could not be crushed by firepower alone. Back with the human fleet, Ethan Brooks coordinated a risky maneuver. They planned to split into small groups, lure the Varethi into a narrow corridor near an asteroid cluster, and deploy gravity mines developed by Megan Carter. The plan relied on timing and courage. Any mistake could destroy the fleet. "Are you sure this will work?" Nora asked, watching the sensors nervously. "It's the only chance we have," Ethan said. "We don't have the numbers, we don't have the firepower, but we have creativity, courage, and adaptability. That is enough." The human ships moved into position, weaving between asteroid fields. The Varethi fleet pursued, confident that their superior numbers would overwhelm the humans. But as they entered the corridor, the gravity mines detonated, pulling enemy ships off course, disabling shields and causing collisions between their vessels. The humans struck in waves, hitting weakened points. Small ships rammed where weapons had failed. Explosions erupted in unexpected patterns. By the end of the maneuver, several Varethi cruisers were damaged and one was lost completely. Ethan's voice came over the fleet comms. "We survived because we fight even when we are afraid. That is what makes us strong. Remember that." Across the battlefield, human ships adjusted their tactics instantly, learning from every move, every loss. Even damaged ships contributed, drawing enemy fire or blocking paths. The Varethi were forced to retreat temporarily. Kaler studied the reports from his fleet. They had lost ships to what he considered simple tricks. Humans had no advanced shields or energy weapons comparable to the Varethi, yet they fought in ways that could not be predicted or controlled. "They are remarkable," Kaler said. "They fear death, yet they fight anyway. We must reconsider our approach. They cannot be underestimated." His officers exchanged nervous glances. They had never seen Kaler hesitate. He had never admitted to fear. Yet the humans were making him question everything he knew about war. On Titan, civilians celebrated small victories even while mourning the dead. Engineers who had never fired a weapon before now guided missiles. Scientists monitored enemy shields and relayed positions to pilots. Children and elderly were moved to safety, but everyone contributed in some way. Fear was present in every heart, yet it did not stop action. Ethan looked at the communications channels filled with reports from colonies and fleet ships. The humans were not just surviving, they were adapting, learning, and striking back. "Fear is not weakness," he said quietly. "It is fuel. Every time we face something worse than ourselves, every time we risk death, it makes us smarter, faster, stronger. That is why we survive." Jake Miller nodded. "And that is why they cannot predict us. They think like machines. They fight like machines, but we are human, we make mistakes, we take risks, and we survive anyway." Megan Carter added, "Every plan we make, every improvisation, every risky move, it teaches them something new about us, but we teach them too late. They can't keep up." Ethan smiled faintly. "Exactly, and that is why we will keep fighting, no matter the cost." The Varethi, facing loss after loss, began to retreat in some sectors. It was the first time in recorded history that the Empire had been forced to do so by a lesser species. Kaler realized that humans were dangerous not because they were stronger, but because they understood fear and refused to let it control them. "They are unpredictable," Kaler whispered to himself, "and that makes them deadly." The humans, battered and tired, regrouped. Ships were repaired, weapons were recalibrated, and strategies were adjusted based on lessons learned. Despite loss and fear, they remained united. They had begun to understand the first truth of fighting the Varethi. Fear was inevitable, but surrender was optional. Ethan Brooks looked at the fleet, proud and exhausted. "We survived the first wave, but the war is not over. It is only beginning, and we will be ready." Across the galaxy, the Varethi had begun to fear, not the humans' weapons, not their numbers, but their spirit. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the Empire faced a species that refused to bow, refused to surrender, and refused to be afraid. And in that moment, humans had discovered their greatest strength, courage in the face of the impossible. The humans had learned much in the weeks of battle. They had lost ships, colonies, and friends, but they had also learned the first secret of fighting the Varethi. Fear did not destroy them. It gave them focus, drive, and courage. Each loss taught a lesson. Each failure built knowledge. Captain Ethan Brooks stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the fleet's largest remaining carrier. His hands rested on the rail as he watched the projections of the approaching Varethi armada. The fleet had grown smaller. Many ships were destroyed. Many crews were gone. But what remained was strong, determined, and united. "Sir," Lieutenant Nora Blake said, her voice steady despite exhaustion, "the Varethi armada is 3 times larger than our fleet. They've concentrated every ship they can spare." Ethan did not flinch. "Then we make them work for it. Every advantage we can take, every weakness we can find, we use it. Today we fight not because we have to survive, but because we have to show them what humanity is." In the fleet, pilots checked weapons and shields for the final time. Engineers ran through every system, repairing damage from earlier battles. Civilians and volunteers prepared support vessels, loading supplies and modified weapons. Dr. Megan Carter oversaw the final calibration of her gravity mines. Each mine was unstable, dangerous, and highly effective. She had worked night and day to create as many as possible. Each was a small gamble, a chance to level the playing field against ships that dwarfed them in size and firepower. "Remember," she told the young engineers, "these mines will move the enemy into positions they cannot control. Timing is everything. One mistake and we lose ships, but if we succeed, we hit them where it hurts the most." Jake Miller, standing beside her, nodded. "And we coordinate attacks from multiple angles. They will not be able to track every move. They cannot predict us completely. That is why we can win." Ethan approached them both. "We fight as one fleet. Every ship, every crew, every civilian contributes. We take risks, yes. But the Varethi will not know what hit them." Beyond the orbit of Earth, the Varethi fleet loomed like a wall of silver. Every ship was massive, precise, and gleaming. They had lost smaller engagements in the outer system, but they still believed their superiority was absolute. Kaler, the Varethi commander, watched the human fleet carefully. "They are foolish," he said to his officers. "They know our strength, they know their own weakness, and yet they stand." "They fight with courage," an officer replied, "or perhaps ignorance." Kaler did not answer. He had observed humans for weeks now. They were unpredictable, creative, and relentless. The patterns they created could not be calculated by any Varethi algorithm. Every time they adapted to one tactic, another followed, faster, smarter. "They do not surrender," Kaler said softly, "and that makes them dangerous, not because they are strong, but because they are willing to die and learn at the same time." The fleet moved forward in formation, ready for the decisive engagement. This would be the battle to decide control of the human system. Kaler had no intention of underestimating them again. On the Resolute, Ethan gave the final orders. "All ships," he said, voice steady over comms, "we have faced them before. We have lost friends, but we have learned. Today we fight for humanity. Every maneuver counts, every ship counts, and every crew member counts. Do not be afraid. Fear is not weakness. Use it. Use it to fight harder, think faster, and survive. Forward." Human ships accelerated into position. They moved in irregular formations, weaving between asteroids and moons, hiding within gravitational shadows. Small frigates darted ahead as scouts, drawing attention while larger vessels moved to strike. Dr. Megan Carter's gravity mines were deployed in patterns across the asteroid belts. Each mine created distortions in space, pulling enemy ships slightly off course. Even a small shift could throw the Varethi calculations off, forcing them to react instead of controlling the battle. Civilians in converted freighters helped load supplies and operate defensive systems. Even damaged ships were pressed into service, acting as bait or shields for weaker vessels. Humans had no fear of loss because they had learned to accept it as part of survival. The first contact was violent. Varethi energy beams flared across the void, striking human ships. Explosions erupted as shields failed. Smaller vessels were destroyed immediately, but humans continued to advance, dodging, weaving, and counterattacking. A squadron led by Lieutenant Mara Johnson darted between two Varethi cruisers. They fired explosives designed to interfere with energy shields. The cruisers faltered, shields flickering. Mara's ship was damaged, engines failing, but she kept going, leading her squadron into position to block the cruiser's escape. Another group, led by Captain Brooks himself, targeted the enemy's communications network. Using the chaos of mine-induced gravitational shifts, the humans sent coordinated attacks from multiple angles. The Varethi fleet could not adjust fast enough. Ships collided, shields failed, and order began to break down. "Focus fire on the largest cruiser," Jake Miller commanded. "Use the disrupted paths. Strike where shields are weakest." Explosions tore through the enemy ship. Smoke and sparks floated into the void. Smaller Varethi vessels tried to respond, but every maneuver was countered by humans who adapted instantly. Kaler, watching the projections, realized something he had never felt before. "They are not perfect," he said. "They are flawed, but their flaws make them strong. They survive despite fear, despite danger, despite death. That is terrifying."